Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Zodiac Bandit, and over the last couple of weeks we've been getting a lot of information about Campaign 4 and specifically the characters within Campaign 4 before it's released to sort of build up hype. So my question that I've sort of been pondering over the last little while, and something I actually hinted at in one of my more recent videos, was is it a bad thing that they're sort of releasing this much information, or is it a good thing? So I've had some pushback against the idea because I briefly mentioned that I did think it was potentially a bad thing, and some people gave some good arguments as to why it's not a bad thing and why it was actually a very smart idea. So I kind of want to talk about how I feel about it and sort of go over what the other counterpoints were and just have a general conversation about the idea of, are they releasing too much information about Campaign 4, and could they be giving out information in a different way? Before we get started, I do want to just say spoiler warning for anything related to Campaign 4, because realistically, they have already given us a bunch of information, and I'm going to be talking about that today. So if you've been trying to avoid it like the plague, like I know some people have been, I recommend not watching this video. So with that all being said, let's get into it. So over the last couple weeks, maybe even a couple months, Critical Role has been giving us information about Campaign 4, starting with Brennan is going to be the DM, meaning that Matt is going to be a player. There's going to be 13 players. There's going to be 3 different tables, and they're going to have different groups focusing on different things, that being the soldiers, seekers, and the schemers, each of them, surrounding different things. Soldiers are going to be more fight-oriented, seekers are going to be more lore-oriented, and the schemers are going to be more roleplay espionage oriented. So we know a great deal about like the format of how this is going to go, and with that we can sort of like hypothesize how it's going to go. It's probably going to be like a month by month cases where they go, depending on if they're going to continue with the do 3 episodes a month thing and then take a break, so we could see 3 episodes per group, or if they're just going to do 4 episodes every month, and then that's just kind of how they're going to stick with it. So we could get 4 episodes with each group. So we can sort of glean that information from all that. But then on top of that, not only have we gotten that, we got the system that they're going to be playing, which is going to be Dungeons & Dragons 2024 rules. But based off some of the stuff that they've said, it's also going to like sort of mix and match with a lot of 5e stuff, which is kind of what the 2024 rules are supposed to do. Supposed to be backwards compatible. So that's a good thing. All these things are perfectly fine and perfectly reasonable things for us to know. I have no issues with learning any of these things. On top of that, however, we have been given a lot more information that we would never have gotten prior to something like this, right? So in previous campaigns, we had never been given any information about anything that anybody is playing. That is not the case this time around, and for Campaign 4, we've been given a lot of information about the PCs prior to the release of Campaign 4. So Critical Role released all of the character art and the character names and who is going to be playing which character for Campaign 3 as of right now. Of course, some of these characters could inevitably die off and have to swap, or maybe someone gets bored of this character and they choose to switch out their character for something else. But as of right now, we have been given all of the names, and basically we can tell what most of their races are, but we also know who's playing what. So realistically, we know more than anything going into at least Campaign 2 and 3. I'll actually talk about the Campaign 1 stuff in a minute. But as far as, Campaign 2 and 3, the precedent that they've set over the last 10 years, this is some of the most information that we've had going into a campaign in a very long time, and it just seems to be quite a lot as far as what we know. We know classes for 2 of these characters, and we have a pretty strong foundation for a handful of other characters as well. We know Thimble's class, and we know Tior's class for sure, as they were confirmed in the good old vibe check video they put out. And then on top of that, there's been, clippings of stuff in the background, and people have noticed in like screenshots and stuff of videos and just hitting pause button that we've seen, certain characters have their classes released, like released in quotes. Like we know Liam's character is going to be a bard, Abria's character is going to be a druid, and it seems like Taliesin's character is going to be a warlock, and it's very likely that Sam's character is a sorcerer, all based off being able to like hit pause on the what is Campaign 4 video that they made, and in like written on like the whiteboard in the background, we saw all of these things. We've even seen potential races for some of these characters because of the same idea as well. So we have a ton of information just sprinkled throughout the last couple of months of Critical Role videos, and it's a lot before the campaign is even released. And of course, on top of all this information that we've already got, there's nothing saying that they're going to stop giving us any information whatsoever. So we could get more before Campaign 4 even starts on October 2nd. We still have about a week and a half before that happens. So there's a ton of time for them to just release whatever information they want about Campaign 4, and yet again, more stuff would be revealed. So the question is this a good thing or a bad thing? Now, at first, when I first started thinking about all of this and really taking in how much information we had received, I personally thought it was a bad thing. I'm a huge hater of spoilers. I don't like having any information about something going into it. That's why for me, a good trailer is literally just a couple of seconds of seeing a character on screen, and typically the main character on screen for a trailer, and then seeing the logo of the movie, and that's about all you need. Maybe some music thrown in there as well and some sound effects, maybe a potential showing of a visual effect. I don't think you need too much in trailers, and I actually fucking hate modern day trailers in most movies, video games, or whatever, TV shows. I hate most of them because they show they tend to show a lot of things. In fact, the greatest example of why I don't even watch teaser trailers anymore is Thor Ragnarok, back when Marvel was at its peak, in my opinion. They released the first trailer for this, and it full on spoiled one of the coolest moments in the movie. Imagine had that not been spoiled, it would have been so much better to see that for the first time in the movie. But because it created a talking point is why they did it. It was able to create some sort of hype around the movie and see what the hell is going to happen next, because they spoiled a massive part. I fucking hate that. I think that's so stupid, but I understand the reasoning as to why they did it. So for me, I get why they're releasing a bunch of this stuff, and I'm going to talk about why they could be releasing all this stuff, but I personally just don't like spoilers in that way. I think we could have just left it at the character art and the character names and who's playing it. After that, we didn't need the vibe check video. I honestly think that's sort of what's pushing it over the edge for me, because I want to experience the characters for the first time while watching it. And now that's not going to happen anymore for us. And one of my favorite elements of watching Campaign 2 and Campaign 3 was when the first characters, or the first meetup between all the characters, and they got to sort of react to each other for the first time. They got to sort of interact with each other for the first time. That is what made the opening of Campaign 2 so memorable for me. The fact that everyone got to react to Veth's voice, or Nott's voice at the time. Everyone got to react to Caleb, Jester, Ford, everything all at once. Molly Mock and his ridiculous accent. We got to witness their reactions for the first time about these characters, and I feel like because we have all this information, the party themselves, the cast themselves, can still react that way, just we won't have the same level of reaction because we already have an understanding of these characters going into it based off the vibe check video and all the information that we do have about them. I just feel like a part of that is going to be taken away, and it's not going to be as surprising. One of my favorite parts of the show is to see the character art for the first time pop up in the little corner beneath Matt. So for me, not having that true realization of oh, that's what the character looks like for the first time is going to be something that's taken away from my enjoyment of episode 1. I'm not saying it's going to be a bad episode because of that. I'm just saying that part, one of my favorite parts, one of my favorite feelings, isn't going to be there the same way as it used to be, and I feel like that's a mild bad thing. So I guess now is the time to sort of bring up that, yes, prior to Campaign 1, they did release small, vignette style videos about each of the characters, sort of giving us a mild understanding of who they were. But I think it's important to remember when it comes to that campaign that they had been playing their characters for a little while now, and initially started as a Pathfinder game. It was a home game that Felicia Day sort of told them, hey, you guys would be able to have a big audience if you came to Geek and Sundry, and maybe something could happen with this. And none of the cast thought it would turn into anything, but it turned into Critical Role. So yes, they gave us some information about these characters, but these characters had been going for 10 levels at this point, or 9 levels. They had already gone from level 1 to the level that they started in Campaign 1, and then they did 115 episodes after that, right? So they needed to sort of give us information about these characters because there were already relationships between characters building, there were already relationships between NPCs and NPCs, there were already several villains they had killed that they were going to reference in the future. A bunch of stuff had already happened to these characters that were going to be relevant, so they did need to sort of give some information prior to the campaign starting. It wasn't like that they had just started a new game. The first episode literally opens with Matt saying, this is a continuation of our home game, which is why they did that, which is why they sort of made the vignettes about the characters. And even then, it didn't spoil too much about it, and we still had to piece together a lot of information that wasn't being outright told to us prior to the campaign happening. I've taken hours to look at the wiki about prior to the campaign stuff, and there's a lot there. There's a lot of stuff that they did that they reference all the time, and they tend not to fill us in on it because that's just part of their game, which is why a lot of people will argue they're just playing a game and we get to watch, which is the whole point of it, right? So that is sort of the difference here between these two things. It's not necessarily that they're exactly the same thing. They are similar in the fact that they are giving out information, but I feel like the information that we're being told now about a lot of the stuff going into the campaign is a lot. And some people might point out that in the past, I've wanted them to release information. The only things that I wanted them to tell us about it was it going to be in Exandria, who is going to be playing, and what system. That was all I ever really wanted. Oh, and when it was starting. I didn't need to have the character stuff be released in any form or any fashion. But now we have some of it, and I feel like it could have been held on to entirely until the campaign started. So let's talk about the good aspects of all of this and why they could potentially be doing this in the way that they're doing it. So the first reason that they could be doing this is to build hype. And I'm almost positive this one's true. To build hype towards the campaign through, releasing information about it, because it allows people to create videos, make theories, have expectations, try to predict classes, all that sort of stuff. Maybe even just by basing stuff off of like character appearances, you try to see who's related to each other, who's dating each other, right? That sort of deal, what the character could be about. A lot of people have already made theories about Robbie's character being a sort of closed off individual when it comes to talking to humanoids, but when it comes to talking to animals, he's all for it because, he seems like he would be really closed off, but he has the best friend and a wolf companion beside him, so maybe he loves animals, right? The whole idea of building theories off just seeing the character appearance, making videos off the character appearance like I have in the past or super recently, and then I've seen hundreds of TikTok videos as of late of people talking about the characters, right? So it just makes sense that they're building up hype and allowing us to make theories based off of these character descriptions that we have thus far. And releasing the Vibe video also sort of gave us even more ammo to do this with. It allowed me to make my sort of like character based on interest video and have a bit more, just a tiny bit more to work off of. So if I had to make a guess, realistically, this was the reason they did it, to build up hype so that way when campaign 4 does come out, they have a massive influx of new viewers, old viewers, and everyone who's sort of excited based off theories they saw, videos they saw. I truly believe that this is the driving factor for releasing all these characters, to truly get us hyped and excited and make theories so that we watch campaign 4's first episode on October 2nd. So I think that this theory or expectations idea could also be a bad thing. It could also kind of stab them in the back a tiny bit if the people have their expectations so high and they like a theory so much about these characters prior to going into it and seeing anything and getting the information before them, and they make all these theories about what these characters could be and all that sort of stuff. It could sort of stab them in the back. I think that a good example of this happening is with Star Wars The Last Jedi. I saw countless videos of people making theories on basically every aspect about Snoke, about who Rey's parents could be, Kylo Ren's fall, what Luke was doing during all of his time away from everybody else. There was countless theories, and then the movie came out and a ton of those theories were just not even close to something that happened. And I could feel like this could be a bad thing potentially for campaign 4, but I highly doubt it. I don't think there's enough of us. There's not enough for us to go off of to make theories about anything like that to that extent quite yet, with the exception of maybe Liam's character name being the same as the character referenced in the trailer. But that's the only thing we really have to go off for that, which is why I didn't really bring it up at all before this point. I do think that potentially building up theories and giving us time to build up theories could be a bad thing, because then our expectations could be absolutely crushed. But I don't think it's at that point yet. Maybe if they had done this a couple months even earlier than this, they released a bunch of character stuff prior to even what we have now, maybe just after Age of Umber ended, or maybe even before Age of Umber started, I could see that being a problem, but it might not be a problem now because it's only about a week and a half before campaign 4 even starts. But it could be a problem is all I want to say. Also, I just want to point out this is not an invitation to start talking about Star Wars. I just thought of it as a good example. I love all the Star Wars movies, literally every single one, episode 1 through episode 9. So just leave it at that. You're never going to change my opinion on Star Wars. Don't try. Another good reason I saw for, them releasing all this information about the characters off the bat is so that by the time the first episode comes around, and they're introducing 13 characters within the first episode, we as viewers aren't fucking lost in the ocean of having to remember everyone's names, having to remember everyone's sort of deal, what they look like, all that sort of stuff. We already know that going into the campaign. So we have an understanding of who these characters are, even if it's so mildly an understanding of who they are prior to the game. So now we don't have to worry about remembering who's playing what, because we already know who's playing who going into the campaign, which is a very good move, especially because that table is going to look cramped for the first 4 episodes. The first 4 episodes is going to have everyone sitting there. I'm sure they're going to introduce people slowly at a time, so it's going to be like the first group and then the second group and then the third group and now the table's full, but it will happen, and the first 4 episodes are going to have all 13 players at the table before they inevitably break off in different directions. So that's a lot to keep track of. 13 people to have to remember. But because we've had 2 weeks prior to the first campaign episode being released, we already know who they are. We already have an understanding of who's playing who. I think that is a very smart thing for them to have done. And apparently it's something that they do in Dimension 20 all the time, which might be what, something Brennan brought over. They brought in the idea of, introducing character art and character names prior to it so that everyone has an understanding. It's sort of, in congruency with building hype. It gives us that idea of we already know a tiny bit before going into it, so we don't lose track of what's happening and who's doing something with who, what's happening with who sort of deal. It just allows things to be a lot neater as time moves on, and that we have an understanding of what we're looking at as opposed to getting lost in the sea of inevitable accents, inevitable characters, right? All that sort of stuff, relationships between people. We are going to have a lot of stuff to deal with, but we have a super mild understanding going in, which I think is a very good move. So at the end of the day, is this a good thing or a bad thing that they've released a decent amount of information going into the campaign? I think it's a double-edged sword. I personally agree with both sides that there is a good reason to do this, but I also think there's a lot of kind of spoilery stuff that's going to take away from episode 1 just a tiny bit. So for me, I am truly going to miss out on seeing the character art for the first time while we get introduced to the character and while we hear the voice for the first time. I am going to miss that just the tiniest bit. However, I do think that it was a very smart idea to build up hype and to get us understanding, or at least get us an image in our heads about who is playing what character, because it will allow us to keep track of things as we move forward. So it is a double-edged sword. However, I personally hate spoilers to the point so much that I would have rather not gotten all this information. I think we could have really just stuck with the emojis and sort of left it there, but I understand their want for releasing other information first. So I get it. I just personally am not the biggest fan of it. I personally think if you wanted to give out more information and prior to Campaign 4 about Campaign 4, it should be about the world that we're going to be going into, Ahriman. I think we need a lot more information to sort of build up hype a little bit about the world itself, because I'm still, with everything that's been going on, I still think leaving Exandria was kind of a meh move, because Exandria was in such an interesting place. You need to build up hype for people like me who loved Exandria so much. It's part of the reason I stuck around and kept watching, because the world is so fascinating. I need more information about Ahriman before we can truly get into Campaign 4. That way I can build up hype, build up potential theories even more. I think if they were to release any more information, I want it to exclusively be about Ahriman. I need more information about Ahriman. What kind of structure does the world have now that there's no gods? What kind of stuff do people ask for divinity, or what kind of places do they reach out for hope and prayer and stuff now? What do they do? That sort of stuff would be interesting for us to have. They did something similar prior to Campaign 3, where they released a good deal of information going into it. I feel like they should have at least one video where they talk about cities of Ahriman, where they talk about continents, countries, different factions. You don't have to give us everything, but I do feel like we do need some sort of information about the world prior going into it, because right now I feel like I'm going into something super blind as far as the world is concerned, and I'm not a big fan of that. Part of the reason I loved Campaign 3 so much is because I had a decent understanding of Exandria, and then the idea that maybe things were going to collide in this campaign were really fun. And as time went on, more characters from previous campaigns were showing up, and I enjoyed it because of that aspect. I'd watched Campaign 2 and Campaign 1 at that point, so for me, getting to enjoy all of it together like that was extremely rewarding. But not having any information about Ahriman going into it feels a little for lack of a better term, naked, if you will. So it feels bare bones and naked right now. I want a bit more information about the world. But let me know what you guys think. Was this a good move? Was this a bad move? Do you want more information about the world going into it? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I will see you guys on Friday for whatever video I make next. Peace.